welcome everybody. My name is Sarah Snell Cooke. I am your host here at the Credit Union Connection. I am here today with Jennifer Jordan. Welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And she is Director of Sales and Partnerships at a company called HC3. Would you tell us a little bit more about yourself and the company?
Yeah, so HC3 is based out of Birmingham, Alabama, and we take the data from financial institutions and turn it into their documents. So on the regulatory side, thinking like statements and loan notices, things like that, we offer both the print and digital ability to deliver those back to their own customers and members. And then we have 3 facilities across the US. So we have that we can facilitate the mail stream from. And then also on the digital side, we integrate with all of the cores and then the online banking platforms to make that process easier.
Yeah, that's great. Getting integrated with the core is always important.
Yes, it is.
And so, one of what you want to talk about today is leadership, which I think
Mhm.
is a great topic. I think, one of the reasons we started the Credit Union Connection was because some of these mergers are happening because credit unions don't have a succession plan, don't have anybody trained up, or like people who even look outside for their next CEO or whatever. Um, they don't have the breadth and depth of the full credit union experience, if you will, because of increasing C-suite positions, making it a little more all those verticals, people don't get as much of a broad view of the credit union. So what we're hearing from some of the executive recruiters. One of the things that I think is really interesting, and I talk to my kids about this a lot, is anyone in any position can be a leader. Um, and my daughter, when she played softball, she'd tell you what to do. She told those players what to do. But anyway, so how can this translate, and what it's going to look like in credit unions and fintechs as people become emerging leaders?
I think that's really important. When you look at leadership in an organization, understanding that it's in the historically it may have been just that C-level, but what's
Mhm.
important is to be able to empower everyone in the organization to feel like they can be a leader. I think empowering people to feel like they have the ability to make decisions, add value, come up with new solutions and new ways to do things is really important. And I think that helps to grow and develop people within the organization as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, sometimes that can be threatening to their managers or the people who are, training them up to eventually potentially replace them or, become a peer. How do you avoid that kind of tension and conflict there?
I think for us, we utilize the predictive index. So that helps us to identify where people are going to be the strongest at. And then making sure that we have the right people in the right seat. So then using what we know about individuals to really align their goals and their strategic objectives to a place where they can shine.
Mm-hmm.
Because that way we're not competing against each other internally. You're really identifying this is my strength and my skill set that I bring to the table. And I need people that are going to complement that and bring other things to the table too, so that you're really more well-rounded as an organization.
Yeah, yeah, it sounds like a good plan. So, what are some of the key indicators that you're looking for when you're looking to identify the emerging leaders, and how do you operationalize that too?
I think for me, some of the things that we look for is, looking at who's willing to step up without being asked sometimes, right? Who's going to think outside the box and bring their own vision to the table, because sometimes you might get stuck in a stagnant place where you need somebody with a new vision, especially if you've always done things a certain way. People who are going to take ownership of their roles and their responsibilities, but also look for ways to change things and make things better, keeping in mind that at the end of the day, everyone has one common goal, and that's, the health of the organization and making sure that everyone's successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's so important, like the internal skills, and not just the hard skills, the soft skills now in particular are becoming much more important, and than the traditional kind of I'm the leader, you do what I say kind of thing. So how do you develop these or how do you create a development plan for these emerging individuals and balance both what they want and then what the company needs?
I think it's important to challenge your people to talk to you about what they want and then identify, how can I help you develop to that point? Maybe it isn't exactly what they think they want, but they've got to be able to have a voice to share with you. Hey, these are things I'm interested in learning. These are things I think I can be impactful at. And once they give you that framework, then we can take that and say, okay, well, how does that fit within the organization? And where can I give them ways to challenge themselves to step up and become a better leader and develop a different skill set even?
Hmm. And so, what would an effective development plan look like? A little more. Can you get more specific about that as far as steps?
Sure. So for us, we do it as part of our, one of the ways we look at that is looking at sitting down and having quarterly reviews with employees. And that's part of what we talk about is, where do you see yourself in 6 months? Where do you see yourself in 3 years? What do you want to do that you don't have the opportunity to do today? And then once they voice that to us, then we can say, okay, well, let's think about what that looks like. What would a plan look like to get you there? And then once we know and we've identified this is a path that everyone seems to think is the right path for this person, then we're able to deliver them projects and things to work on that are going to continue to elevate them and develop them up to that next role of where they want to be.
Yeah, yeah. And as you're testing the waters of your capabilities, you're the emerging leader. Um, Obviously part of that is failing, is not doing those, falling on your face occasionally. How do you encourage that experimentation, if you will, and let them know you're not going to be 100% because you're human. but but yeah, handling that kind of side of it too.
Right. I think you absolutely have to let them know that it's okay to fail because we're all going to fail at some point. I think what I look for is the ability to take initiative and to try new things. And then understanding that as you're going through the process, you're constantly evaluating so that you can course correct if things don't go exactly the way you planned. Because most of the time they don't. But then letting them know that, but then also keeping that cadence of communication back and forth so that everyone involved in the project would be aligned and be able to understand and recognize, hey, this isn't exactly what we thought. It's time to sit down and think through what do we need to change and be
Mhm.
able to adapt and change
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah. And I would think particularly in such a regulated uh industry as financial services, it might be even more scary to fail. Um how do you provide that kind of support where they're like feel comfortable with it?
It's absolutely scary to fail because of the risk side of it from a compliance structure as well. I think just keeping that check and balance in place so that, again, they know they can experiment in baby steps, if you will, and not take big giant leaps off to try to do something different. But then having the communication internally constantly happening so that they are getting feedback in the moment and it's very timely and relevant so that if something does need to change or if it looks like the risk of failure is growing, you can stop and say, okay, let's reassess and see what we need to do differently.
Yeah, and that's at least the third time you've mentioned communications. So yay, all about communications, all about that. Um, and that's a huge part of the culture. And so, like, what role does the organizational culture play when you're developing leaders? Whether they are currently a mailroom person or a VP of whatever and want to take their next step.
I think it starts at the top. So I think people will mirror what they see coming down from the executive leadership team. For us, we use the entrepreneurial operating system, so EOS, and that
Mm,
really helps to structure our processes across the company so that everyone's kind of following that same structure, but then also it it has to start at the top down for it to work. So we're as your executive leadership team is modeling the behaviors and the core values that we want everyone in the company to exhibit, then that kind of falls down to the rest of the team so that they see that on a daily basis and they also strive to do those same things and adhere to the same core values.
Yeah. And that has to be difficult in the modern workplace because you've got AI coming in now, you've got people working from home in a lot of cases. And so that how do you ensure that culture when there's people remote and things like that?
One way we do it is we constantly talk about what the core values are. So on a weekly basis, we have kind of a company huddle or share out, this is the core value that we're talking about this week. And so to someone coming in, it might feel repetitive at times, but for someone who's been there for a while, I find it a great way to just keep it front and center. It's part of our structure when we sit down and do one-on-one conversations, when we have any type of review process, that it's always front and center. So it's always on the top of people's minds. And
Mm.
that also doing that allows us to be able to, when we recognize someone not exhibiting those same core behaviors, call it out in a more natural way so that it's more like, hey, I saw this behavior today. Let's talk about what's going on so that we can help you make sure that you are adhering to our core values.
And so also with getting back to risk management a little bit, and I mentioned AI earlier. Um, there's a lot of innovation going on in banking technology right now. And how does that affect the risk management piece of balancing innovation from these potential emerging leaders? And how do you navigate that tension between doing something new and interesting and cool that might really help the company versus, making sure you remain compliant while you're doing it?
Right. I think you have to have a team of people that are looking at that constantly. So you've got your compliance side, you're always going to look at their pieces, but you've got to, in order to continue to innovate, you've got to embrace change. So
Mm,
figuring out what's the best path forward to tie all that in. It is risky and AI is everywhere. And especially that can be a huge risk for financial institutions because of the data side of it. But at the same time, if you don't dabble in it and start getting your feet wet in it, you're going to get left behind. So you have to be able to embrace it to some extent and just kind of start slowly manipulating it into how you do things and seeing how it can make things better and improve efficiencies.
and so uh, as we're talking about innovation, I'm also thinking about the evolution of leadership and what that means. And so what is going to become critical for, the modern financial institution or fintech of today and in the future?
Gosh, I think the critical things are going to be constantly striving to be innovative, but also understanding the path that's going to take you the right way from a compliance standpoint and also stay true to your goals and where you want to go. But I think you've got to constantly be looking for innovation within. And as you look to bring on new people and grow your teams, looking for those same types of capabilities and personalities that are going to help drive you.
Right.
We, on that predictive index tool that I mentioned earlier that we use, we really look to see, what are people going to be comfortable with and where are their stretch goals. So if someone's not comfortable with one thing, then let's give them some opportunities to potentially stretch them further so that they can build those strengths up. And I think
Yeah.
that's a really big indicator for how you can navigate some of those things.
Mm-hmm. Yes, stretch goals. Gotta love them.
They make you uncomfortable, but they're good for you.
They do. They absolutely are. Yes. So how do you measure this? How do you make sure you're getting an ROI on your investment in your people?
I think that what's really important is doing continual assessments. So you're having those conversations, you're understanding, what are you gaining from that employee? What's the value that they're bringing? How are they embracing those changes that might be coming about? Because that's going to help you to constantly understand, okay, we tried this and this is what it got us in the end. So you constantly get that ROI assessments rather than waiting, for an annual review, if you
Yeah,
will. It
like
needs to
that.
be more timely. For us, we kind of operate on that weekly to biweekly cadence, depending on the role in the organization, because that also keeps that line of communication really open.
Right. Yeah. I mean, for salespeople, it's easy to check the metrics, right? Um, but some of the positions, it might be like m- harder to really measure, like a call center, for example, you
Mhm.
know. Are they turning over more calls? Are they selling more product? You know, like things, I guess there are ways to measure it, but yeah, it's a little less obvious than sales, I suppose. Um, so if you are talking to a credit union professional or a fintech founder, what are the top 3 recommendations that you would have for them about developing leadership at every level?
Gosh, only 3?
You
That's
can do
hard.
more.
Yeah, I think that it would be, gosh, constantly reassessing the people that you have and taking stock of your inventory, if you will, of what talent you have on the table and identifying holes for where you need to fill those holes with new potential hires. I think it's always going to be taking a look at what are your goals, what are your, not even just your stretch goals individually, but what are your 1, 3, and 10-year goals? Where are you trying to get to? And have you identified the right people to help get you to those goals? And then lastly, I think just really being aware of what is happening with the current culture today in your organization. It doesn't take much for a culture to get off track. And I think if you keep it front and center, then it's really going to help you to stay looped in, stay in the know, and identify very quickly if anything feels off. Because any kind of obstacle that you face, any chink in that culture armor is going to ultimately affect those 1, 3, and 10-year goals.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always allow my guests the final thoughts as we close up the show. What would you like to leave our credit executive audience with?
I think for me, what I would like to leave everyone is just make sure that you are checking that pulse of your culture, because having that constant cadence with your teams is going to help you to identify not only where your gaps are, but also it'll help you to give you those opportunities to coach and develop people. So keep that line of communication open. I know I've said that a lot, but that is so very important. But then also make sure that you are also dedicating the time to that development side of your people, because those are your future leaders, and that's what you want. You want to keep them internal. You want to grow them and develop them and make them rock stars for your own organization.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for your time today.
Thank you, Sarah.